when I started riding adventure bikes pretty aggressively, there was really nowhere to go besides like rawhide and a BMW school. Bring your own bike, the bike that you're going to do a BDR on, and kind of get you ready to do a BDR.
This is the Rally Podcast.
This is the bottom of the hill.
Okay, so we're back after some technical difficulties, yeah, we're stoked. We have a really cool guest on tonight on the Rally Podcast. We have Andy Janik from Heavy Enduro. For those who may not be following, Andy does some pretty wild stuff on big bikes, as the name might imply. But instead of me butchering what Heavy Enduro is all about, why don't you give us a rundown on what Heavy Enduro is and what it is you guys do?
So I think first I want to start with where Heavy Enduro came from. I didn't start Heavy Enduro. Two gentlemen in California started in Heavy Enduro. One of them kind of started it and had some help from a friend of mine named Trevor. They kind of got it going. It was more of like a merch kind of lifestyle brand, and I kind of latched onto it. I was riding the Multi, and at that time there weren't a lot of people in the U.S. on big bikes riding them hard, let alone people on Multis. So I live in Chicago. So not only was it hard to find people on big bikes, it was just hard to find anyone in general who wanted to ride adventure anywhere near here. So I kind of like latched onto that. I really like the name. I really like the branding. I really like the people. And that grew into a relationship. And the first person kind of washed out of it. Trevor took it over. Trevor kind of washed out of it. And then Trevor called me up one day randomly and offered it to me. And initially, I'll be honest, like I wasn't sure I was really interested. I liked Instagram, which was the main kind of platform that it was on, for just being able to post what I wanted when I wanted. And I didn't really want to do anything different from that. And I didn't want to be like pressured to kind of create this brand and keep it going and sell merch because I didn't really care. But what I did want to do, and I'd been thinking about for a while, is when I started riding adventure bikes pretty aggressively, there was really nowhere to go besides like rawhide and a BMW school, right? So I had been kind of throwing the idea around of starting a training class to help people that was more affordable and using your bike, not someone else's. Because the BMW classes at the time were like $1,600 or $1,800. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to create someone that was more affordable, bring your own bike, the bike that you're going to do a BDR on, and kind of get you ready to do a BDR. And I figured Heavy Enduro was kind of a good platform to grab and run with. So Trevor didn't really want a lot. He just wanted the brand not to die. So we kind of picked it up and we ran with it. And I think had it not been for my wife, Susan, I probably wouldn't have done it. But she's kind of started a lot of businesses and run a lot of businesses before. So she was all for it, and she loves riding too. So we kind of grabbed it and ran with it. And we don't really push merch. We don't really push sales. Our goal is to just ride, have fun, build a cool community in the Midwest specifically to kind of push riding adventure bikes, specifically like racing locally, and to train people, to just help them get trained. So we do training classes for $300 for one day. That pretty much is all the skills that you need to run almost any BDR. And then from there, it's just growing into, we started like 2 seasons ago. We worked with my buddy Drew and KXCR, which was Kentucky Racing. And Drew got an adventure class started. So we started an adventure class. We started racing. We started pushing that. Unfortunately, this year, it sounds like that adventure class, not just the class, but KXCR has kind of fallen away. The family wanted to walk away from it and sell it, and they haven't had luck. So I haven't heard anything of that coming back. But luckily, I've been able to convince, for the 5 years I've been doing this, I've been trying to convince District 17 to run adventure class. And it sounds like this year they're finally going to do it. So kind of in a nutshell, quickly, that is where we came from and where we're going.
That's cool, man. So when, like, what time frame did you kind of start out on this journey? Because we know, I mean, I kind of knew or got an inkling of you like for the very first time back in like 2018 when we were doing the Dacre here in Canada, and this crazy dude on a Multistrada with knobbies showed up.
Yeah, no windshield.
And I'm like tapping Jay. I'm like, dude, check this shit out. I'm like this. I'm pretty sure this is the dude from the States that does this crazy shit on this Multistrada.
Yeah.
And lo and behold, he's like, you know, super approachable. We had a quick chat, and I think you were there with some. Was it Steve Camrad from RedZilla and maybe one of his buddies? I'm not sure, but it was pretty wild. I was just like, that's cool, man. And then the fact that you actually did that event, because it's no joke, and you did it on that bike, which is also.
Yeah, I mean, I think that was, I met Steve, you know, I meet a lot of people through Instagram, and I think that's been my main platform of connecting with people back when it was more photo based, which I really appreciated. And it was really easy to just back then, and we're saying back then. So like that was a 2016 multi. I bought it new. I traded in a 2010 multi that I really liked, and I wanted it, but I wasn't really ready for it. But the owner of the dealer called me, and he gave me a swinging deal on my multi, and he gave me like below dealer cost on the Enduro. So I didn't pay a whole lot for it, which is one of the reasons I went for that bike. And then 6 months later, the 1290 came out, and I was kicking myself in the ass. But I still love that bike. But, you know, so it was like 2017. One of the first rides that I did was the Tour Tech Rally in Pennsylvania. And then I met some guys there in Pennsylvania that started their own club there, Del Val Trail Riders. I met that crazy guy, Steve Camrad. And so he got me to go to the Sandblast Rally. And then right after that, he invited me to go with himself, Spurgeon Dunbar, which is the RevZilla guy, Jeff Kinnery, which is another RevZilla guy, and then Carlos. So the 5 of us went and did that race. And it was cool. I drove up there in my truck and just towed the trailer. And it's the first time I'd really been over the border into Canada, and the first long race I'd ever done. And I wasn't sure what to expect. And I think it had like stormed really bad, if I remember correctly, like the week before.
Yeah.
And there was like really, really bad
lot
down
of trees down.
Yeah. And I remember, I think there was one section where it was probably like 10 miles of just like tree after tree after tree. And like some of them we could go around through the woods. Some of them we could jump. There was one section where there was like 5 teams stacked in a row. I don't know if you guys were there, but there was literally like 5 teams stacked in a row. And there was like 4 or 5 trees, and one guy happened to have a saw, and everybody was taking turns with this handsaw trying to whack trees. And we all got the trees cut and thrown out of the way, and it was a mad dash to keep going. So all that rain and all those down trees bogged everything down in that race. It was wild. I think we started at 4:20 a.m. I remember that for no particular reason. And
no, none.
And we finished, I think, at 7 is when we made it in for lunch. And I think we were still the first adventure bike team to make it back.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, I think they wouldn't even let us go back out. And I think there was only 2 or maybe 3 teams that actually even finished that whole rally that year. It was wild. It was fun, though. I actually had a lot of.
Yeah, it was we love that event. It's fantastic.
Yeah. I remember that. I remember we were doing the enduro side of it, and we went to one of the checks, and the guy's like, "There's a problem. None of the big bikes have come through yet." And that was late in the day. And then we got word that there was like all these down trees, and we're seeing videos of, was it a BMW jumping or an African Twin or something jumping? And it looked like carnage where you guys were.
Yeah, we had a buddy of ours who was
go to my
big
Instagram. There's an old picture that Steve pulled off a screenshot of me just launching a log on that Ducati. It was hilarious.
Sweet.
We jumped a lot of stuff. We were like literally picking bikes up, like the 4 of us picking them up and throwing them over logs. It was wild.
That's cool.
I almost killed Spurgeon Dunbar on that trip, actually. That's a pretty funny story.
Well,
we were ripping up a hill, and I'm like not too far behind him, and he like stalls it and starts to tip over. And I'm like, well, I don't want to stop on this hill. So I keep going to like get around him, and I squeak left, and he falls left. and my right handguard punches out his windshield as he falls down.
Oops.
That was wild. He gave me shit about that for so long. I felt so bad. I was like, I'm sorry, I almost killed you.
Well, if he was riding better, that wouldn't have been a problem. Just
That's
saying.
right.
Oh,
Ouch.
shots fired. No, he's cool. I had a really good time with those guys. I think Steve came back and his bike it had pissed almost all of its oil out because it was a Triumph Tiger 800, and he smashed his oil pan so hard so many times he pissed nearly all his oil out, and I think that was the last time that bike ever got ridden.
No doubt.
Nice.
Well, that's pretty cool, man. So with the training, how has that evolved over time for you guys? So I guess the question for me is, as both the person giving the training and seeing who's coming through, but also like, are you noticing an evolution or a growth in ridership on the big bikes from your perspective?
I think locally, so we've partnered with a place that does like local motorcycle camping. It's called the Chicago Moto Camp Club, and he also does it's another company called Temple of Moto. So he's brought us a lot of customers because he's really good about this gentleman McKaylee has been really good about kind of developing a community in the Chicagoland area. So he brings us a lot of people. I would say it's been about 3 years. This will be our 4th season. And we went really hard the first year. I think we did like one to two every month for like 9 months the first summer. And then we kind of backed it off a little bit the second year, a little bit the third year. But we're up to like 300 students. And we started with where it kind of began is I basically was doing this ride called the Twat, which is hilarious. It starts in Wisconsin.
I've done that ride before.
And it goes all the way up to the northern side to the lake, right? So it's like a 6-hour ride. It's usually multi-days, and a lot of people do tours on it because it's a really easy kind of like pre-BDR ride to do. It's mostly like 2-track and gravel road and some sand and stuff, but it's pretty chill. And so I was doing a ride as a tail to just try and sweep and make sure everybody was safe. And as I was doing that, I was kind of helping people along the way, like giving them tips and telling them what to do and talking to them about tire pressures and suspensions and all that stuff. And two of the guys, everybody really liked it. And two of the guys specifically were like, you should teach a class. And it was right around the same time that Heavy Enduro talks were happening. So that kind of like, they hammered me for like a month after that to start classes. And I had been working on something else for like a year with Harley Davidson, and that ended up falling through. And I ended up at one of my like local riding facilities and like sparking a deal with them and they had like this giant, it wasn't even like a backhoe. It was literally just like a giant earth mover. I mean, the thing had like a 10-foot blade on it, and they literally just threw me the keys and they're like, figure it out, build whatever you want. So I built this cool like 1 acre little riding area, and we just threw together a training class in like a weekend and just started like, because people were just hammering me wanting the training class, and we've been talking about it, and it kind of pushed me to do it faster than I was ready. And I think there was a lot of kinks that we had to work out, but I'm really happy with like where it is now. I'd say the first year there was a lot of things where like, okay, this works. We want to shift this to this time, and we want to do these things first. We want to spend more time here. And we ended up doing some stuff in Portland with Moto Corsa, and I think that really taught us that we didn't want to do really big groups. We were doing like almost 18 people at Moto Corsa, and that was a little bit too challenging. So, we kind of started to learn we want to limit it. We only want to do 6 people. So 6 people a day is what we cap it at. We spend the first like hour alone on just like bike setup and lever positions and shifters and foot pegs and like brake levers, and really like getting people on the bike and showing them like, this is what happens when you sit, and this is what happens when you stand, and this is why you need things in certain areas. And we actually pull the wrenches out and we adjust people's bikes. So that's literally like the first hour of the class. And then we go into, really simple drills like body position. We start with braking, rear brake only, add front brake. Then we do body position, left turns only, right turns only. So we've been doing that kind of same thing for probably 3 years. And this year we've added a 2.0 class where we're going to start doing like more aggressive hill climbs and like how to rip through like rock garden sections and how to approach like different downhills, different ways. So yeah, this will be the first year for 2.0 is what we're calling that.
Nice.
Cool, man.
And what's the background? Did you have a background in teaching motorcycle skills? Is it just your experience? Is it something you've sought after to learn? Like where did that come from?
That came from having to learn a lot of things the hard way and having to travel. Like I live in Chicago, right? There's nowhere to ride. There's like 3 riding parks. They're all pay to play. You get bored of them real fast. So that came of like not having anybody to ask questions on, because in 2017, it's like, who did you ask on how to set up suspension on a multi-enduro? There's nobody. Like, who do you ask what tire pressures to run, or, how should I approach a hill climb? Like there was nobody doing it besides BMW for $1,800. So I had to spend a lot of time teaching myself and meeting people and just riding people and screwing up. I didn't want people to have to suffer for that. So I just kind of took what I learned and created something. I don't have any formal training. I don't normally, I would say I teach people at work at all the jobs I've ever had, but nothing like official motorcycle wise. I'm not an MSF certified instructor. I'm not a USMC coach. Like I don't have any official certifications, and I don't really, I'll be honest, I don't really care.
Yeah, sure.
I do it because I love it, and my wife does it with me because we really like helping people and growing the sport.
Yep.
Well, that's pretty cool, man. I mean, I don't see any of those guys doing courses like you're doing, so it's all good.
Yeah,
you're rocking it.
No, and I think if you're successful at the way your riding style is, then people probably see that, and then you need to show me how you did that hill climb. So that's probably where it stemmed from, yeah.
And it's much more relatable, right?
That is one of the things that sorry.
Go ahead.
I think that's one of the things that I like to show people in the class is like, you may think you can't do it, but with the right techniques, like it's super doable. Like I started off with no experience. Like I rode dirt bikes when I was a kid. I sucked. I rode street. I got out of it for a while when I went to college and, got a big boy job. And then, as I got back into it, I just, started from nothing and just rode and learned things. And like, if I can do it, it's 100%. If you want it bad enough, you can do it. Like it looks scary, but it's not as bad when you kind of get that repetition in. And I think heavy enduro in general, sometimes I've gotten a little bit of flack for calling it heavy enduro training because people get a little bit nervous. They think it's a little too intimidating, but I'll be honest, I've taken the like MSF courses and I've taken I did the Birch training. I did some Jarvis training just in the last year and a half. Cause I haven't had any real training before that. I did, the Sedlak training like 3 months ago. Our training starts off like really, really slow, and it really like builds on skills, and we don't throw people into things like super fast. Like I've seen a couple other trainings do that. They kind of just throw you into some really aggressive, like sliding drills and braking drills that I'm like, I think that's too much for people. So,
right. That's where your 2.0 comes in.
That's where the 2.0 comes in.
That's right.
All right.
Yeah, man, that's cool. No, I love your approach. It's very similar to kind of our own ethos. Like, we've shown a few people to ride ourselves, and I couldn't agree more. Like, you definitely got to show them how to set up their bikes. You definitely got to kind of give them the basics and show them that this big scary thing they got in their head is not actually that scary once they kind of get a couple wins under their belt and understand that the bike's going to do certain things in certain ways. And once they get a handle on that and their skills, like they understand how to control that bike, it becomes a lot less scary, and then they can progress from there. So it's pretty cool.
Well, I
is
think
it
that's
all,
sorry,
go ahead.
I think that's a super key point. Like
there's a lag
what
in this thing.
Oh, is there? Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
The problem that I'm having with modern manufacturers is, and I learned it with my multi-enduro, is, and I see it more and more, the manufacturers are throwing all these things on here like ABS and 68,000 mode traction control. And, they're throwing all these add-ons on the bike, and it's kind of a false sense of the bike's going to do it for me, right? Like, oh, if I just turn on traction control, I'm just going to crawl up the hill, no problem. If I have ABS on, it's going to save me in this turn. If I, just run this mode, I'm going to be good for this. And the first thing that I do in every single class is you don't get traction control, you don't get ABS until you learn to be the ABS and be the traction control. I need you to understand what the bike is doing and why it's doing it before you start letting a computer decide to do things that you don't even know why it's doing it. So immediately, and that makes some people nervous. And if they don't like it, they can leave. That's fine. I need you to learn the bike and its basics and its form, and I need you to be able to control it in all aspects. Like, you want traction control? You're going to learn this. That's your traction control. You want ABS?
Yep.
You got to learn this. That's your ABS. Then we start to give you those things. And I've actually gone as far as like the new BMWs, you can't turn off front ABS. I'll pull the fuse. I'll unplug an ABS sensor. Like, that's the way we do it at my class.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. We predominantly come, like, we both came from a street background initially, and then got crazier and crazier in the dirt. But I think we kind of jumped off street bikes and jumped straight deep into like enduro riding, and then we kind of built up this love for getting gnarly on the big bikes from that, because we like the power of the street bikes, but we love the off-road aspect of the dirt bikes, and you mix the two. And with the coming from a dirt bike background and really cutting your teeth on that and jumping on the big bikes, it's like the last thing you want is all those aids. You don't want that traction control. You don't want any of that shit. You're like, turn it all off. I don't want that. So I hear you.
There are times that it does help. Like when I remember I was normally on my multi-enduro, I always shut the traction control off. But I was at a ride in Pennsylvania, and it was super mucky, and it was super slick, and it had just rained, and I was like trying super hard to make it up this like side hill to like a left turn straight up a hill, and it was just so slick, and there was so many rocks. Like every time I let the clutch out, like no matter what I did, I was just getting wheel spin. Like just even in enduro mode, it makes 100 foot-pounds of torque. It was just too much. And I did put it on like the first level of traction control, and it did help me up the hill. But like I needed to know what it was doing and why it was doing it. I needed to know that like when I slammed on the gas and it felt like the wheel was just chattering and the bike was broken, that it was just the traction control trying to help me up the hill. And that is, it is helpful, but I need you to understand what and where and why that's helpful before I give it to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't know, like maybe I'm being naive here, but are you only big bikes, or are you obviously the heavy enduro, but do you ride dirt bikes on the side, or are you only the big bikes now?
So I do have a TE 250, a last year carbureted model with Electron on it. So I use that to do like super hard enduro, and like I'll try and figure out stuff on that. Like one day I just went out and I'm like, I'm going to figure out pivot turns today. So I just spent like a couple hours, and I just sat in the yard and figured out pivot turns. And once I kind of got that down, I'm like, okay, cool. Now I know how to do it on the dirt bike. Now I'm going to try it on the adventure bike. And it's way more like intimidating and scary. But like once I have the body mechanics and the movement and what I have to do, it's easier to like translate that when I have it kind of pat down on the dirt bike. So I think the dirt bike, trials bikes too, they're awesome training tools that can be used to make your big bike riding skills better.
Yeah, 100%. I agree.
So on that, my the biggest hurdle for me when I go to transfer the skills that I have on the smaller bikes and I try and use them with the big bikes is always it's the weight, right? It's the weight and the size of the bike. Because when you go to pivot turn a dirt bike and you got it at 12 o'clock and it weighs, 200 pounds or whatever, or 300 pounds. And then you have an adventure bike, which is double or triple that depending on the bike. It's like, it's scary. how do you like? What's your method on dealing with that weight? Like how do you is it just a matter of like going through the motions and repetition and getting used to it, or is there a trick to that you found?
So for me, I feel like it's the training classes have helped because it's not only me teaching other people and learning how to like verbalize what I've had to learn on my own, but it gives me a lot of repetition, right? So I put in a lot of seat time doing the same thing, the same log, the same way, over and over and over again, doing demos for people, right? The same pivot turns. So like for me, I'm always afraid. I'm actually like on the bike, I'm a very self-conscious person, and I'm pretty hard on myself in my head. But I would say when I sit there and just try and play with it a little bit, I'll sit there and try and get the clutch up and try and get the front end up a little bit, and I kind of just try and like walk it up a little bit more each time. And I think you don't get numb to it, but you start to become more comfortable in it. I'm still nervous every time I do a pivot turn, but I'm more comfortable in the fact that I know it's predictable because I've done it so many times. I know what the bike is going to do. And I think one thing to remember about adventure bikes that are different than dirt bikes, they're so front heavy that it takes a lot to get a adventure bike like way up. Like you can whack the crap out of the throttle to make that thing like flip over it's a lot of work. Because the second you chop that throttle or slip that clutch a little bit, like it's slamming back down on the ground. And the other thing that I noticed too is it's harder. The higher the horsepower bike, the harder it is. Like my multi, even just like coming up to a log, trying to just like hop a log, it was really hard to get traction to like pop that front end over it. So I've learned some tricks on the higher horsepower bikes to like force shift weight back. But again, it's just seat time. I have to go out and do it over and over and over again till I know that I can predict what the bike is going to happen when it happens. And that predictability translates to comfort.
That's cool. Yeah, they're definitely a different beast than the enduro bikes. That's for sure.
Yeah. Especially
next time you go out and try a pivot turn over a log, like where the log is here, and you do it over it, like the dirt bikes. That's wild on an adventure bike. I bet.
Bike. Yeah.
Maybe
it's
I'll
like
try
riding a bucking bronco.
Smaller adventure bike. I'll try it on this new Aprilia before I try my 1090.
Just leave that Aprilia
alone.
That's
a perfect bike.
It is actually, yeah. Yeah.
They want it back in brand new condition though, so I don't know.
They do, yeah. Well,
is that a loaner bike?
For the summer, yep.
Yeah, he's cool. He's the fancy pants sponsored rider over here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah. I'm still waiting for the good tires though. So it's 50-50, so we're waiting for the good ones.
What are you putting on it?
The Mitas. They've changed their name this year. I think it's the Mitas Enduro X or something.
Okay.
It used to be the E09.
That's like a soft tire for like it's supposed to be like specifically for riding big bikes super hard.
It is exactly it. Yep. So any day now.
Cool.
Yeah. That sounds exciting.
Yeah.
Is that a 140 80 18 probably?
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. Yep.
I can confirm.
Yeah, you can confirm. Yeah, exactly.
No, it's a good bike. It's a good looking bike.
Yeah. What do you have for a bike right now?
So I'm running the Tenere 700. This will be my third season on it. I bought it during COVID when you couldn't find Teneres. So I actually drove to like northern Vermont to buy it. I drove like 16 hours.
Wow.
Some guy bought it, he bought like $1,000 worth of parts. He bought it in November when it was snowing, right? He threw it in his trailer, drove it home, unloaded it, went snowmobiling like a month later. He's like a 65-year-old dude, blew both his knees out snowmobiling. Was like, I guess I can't ride my Tenere. So I bought a used Tenere with 0 miles with like a box full of new parts he never even installed. That was wild.
Nice. Good find.
Yeah.
I need a second one. I think mine's been in, let's see, we drove it to Arizona and then California and then Vegas. So it's been on the West Coast for like almost 3 months now.
Wow.
I miss my...
I guess.
So we talked on the phone before we got on the podcast a couple weeks ago. You are doing Romaniacs with a buddy of yours, and
I was doing it with a buddy of mine. Unfortunately, Corey from Camel ADV was going to do it with me, and he's had some kind of like long-term spine issues. Not even like bulge disc spine issues. Like the disc is gone, and we're rubbing bone on bone spine issues. So Corey has super high ambitions, and he wanted to do Romaniacs, and he called me up and basically was like, "Hey, I want to do Romaniacs. I'm 48 years old. I ain't getting any younger. Like, let's do Romaniacs. Will you do it with me?" And I was like, I looked over to my wife, and I was like, "Can I do Romaniacs?" And she was like, "Yeah." And I was like, "For real?" No, like, I'm serious. Like, can I do Romaniacs? It's going to be like $20,000. And she's like, "We'll figure it out." And I was like, "All right, I guess I'm doing Romaniacs."
Wow.
You got to keep her.
Yeah.
You got to keep her for sure.
So, well, that's why she's my wife. So, not my girlfriend.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, Corey, he was going to try and do Romaniacs and then have his surgery later, but it got so bad when he was doing some practice training riding where he's just like, there's no way I'm going to make 4 days of hell, So he got spine surgery he flew all the way to Germany because you know how those Canadian doctors are really good, right? So he flew all the way to Germany to get spine surgery, and he's not faring well after the surgery, to put it lightly.
No.
So he has, decided, him and I kind of decided together that it would be best if he waited. So I'm going alone, which is a little daunting to say the least. But it is what it is. I don't, my personality is weird because I don't do things on my own really well. But if somebody's like, "Hey, do you want to do this?" I'm like, "Cool, let's go." And then I'm all in, right? Somebody has to kind of get the ball rolling, and then I'm all in. And now Corey's got the ball rolling, and I'm like, I already told everyone I'm doing it. I've already been training for 3 months. There's no way I'm not doing this. So we're making it happen. And there's been a lot of hiccups all along the way already, but we're figuring it out.
Well, good for you for keeping on that. That's it's pretty awesome. I think it's gonna be a life-changing experience. Everybody we know who's done it has loved it. I don't think you're gonna regret doing it. Absolutely. So are you gonna take that same T7 with you? Are you gonna take that same bike?
So recent developments, that was the plan. There's a lot of time and money and energy in that bike, and I know it and I trust it. And I think there's a lot of, again, it's a familiarity. It's repetition. It's comfort in the bike that I know, right? The second part is, when you get to Romania, you can rent bikes, but they're dirt bikes. Nobody rents T7s because they don't want you trashing their T7. So, I was going to ship it, and, there's that Air Canada program where they ship the bikes and it's like $800 to $2,000 or whatever. And Corey's used it a bunch of times. So, that list doesn't come out till April. And, we decided to do this in November, right? So Corey was like, yeah, it's only going to be $800 or $1,000 and, we'll ship the bikes. And I was like, cool, I'll just, drive from here to Toronto and then ship it from here to, I think we were going to ship it to Austria. We're going to ship it to Austria, Vienna, Austria. And then the team that we hired, which is Carpathian Adventure Tours, which is a whole nother story, they were going to send somebody 2 countries over, pick them up and bring it back. Well, what I found was, the schedules changed. They finally came out about a week or 2 ago. The closest I can get is Rome, which is a 19-hour drive, or Germany, which is more of a drive. If I air ship it, it's $2,000. It still takes a week. If I ship it on a freight container, no one's going into the port in Romania right now because they can't guarantee it because of all the war. So they're going to the port in Germany. So then I'd have to get it to the port in Germany, which I can get it to the port in Germany on a boat for $600, but it's 12 weeks not guaranteed.
Oh my God.
Just one way. And then I have to get it from Germany all the way through 5 countries to Romania. And Romania is really big. So I was concerned about you know, A, it getting lost on a boat, B, it being pirated on a boat and getting stuck somewhere in a port, and then C, trying to go through each country's customs. I figured there's just no way. Like, I'm not spending absorbent amounts of money to go to Romania to end up not having a bike. So Carpathian Adventure Tours is the company that, you know, they actually contacted me when they saw my name on the registry somehow. And I was like, yeah, I'm doing it. And they're like, cool. Do you need a bike? And I was like, you got a Tenere to rent? Because I need one of those. And he was like, oh, wow, you're an idiot. Why are you doing that? And I was like, well, can we do it? And I was like, I'll ship the bike. Me and Corey are going to ship a bike. And he's like, let me talk to my people. And they talked about it, and they were actually really excited. They're like, we'll charge you the same rate as dirt bikers, and we'll take care of it because we're super curious and we want to see how this goes. So they took us on to do that. And then once I called him recently and was like, I don't think I can ship a bike. The logistics is scaring the crap out of me that I'm not going to have a bike. I was like, can you source me a used bike, like a 2020 to 2022? Because I found out the 23s are the TFT Dash in Europe versus in America, it's the 24s. I was like, can you find me a used one for a decent price? And then I ship you all my parts, and I'll send videos of all my setups. Because, I mean, I've got a custom nav tower and different bars and custom switches, and everything's different on this bike. Mm-hmm. And he's like, yeah, we can make that happen. And, you know, in America, the labor rates are like $150 an hour. And in Romania, it's like $35 an hour to have them build my bike. So he's like, yeah, for like 500 euros, we can fully assemble your entire bike for you. And I was like, sold, let's do it. So nice. They're sourcing me a bike right now, and I'm just going to start shipping them parts from Corey's got parts he's going to help me out with. And then Slavens is a big partner that we use. They're going to send a bunch of parts. And then I'm going to strip a bunch of parts off my bike and ship those. And then I'm going to bring my forks and shock on the plane, because those are prototype forks and shock. As it sits right now, there's only one of those in the world. So those are coming with me.
That's sweet. Cool, man. Well, it already sounds like a huge adventure.
It's an adventure and a half right there. That's awesome.
That was my biggest concern. Like, I'm the point and shoot guy. Like, tell me where to go, tell me what to do. I'm on it. Like, I'm a Marine practically. Like, I will just take care of it. But like, tell me to like figure out logistics and where we're going and book hotels. Like, that is my biggest fear. And luckily my wife is like super bomb at that. So she takes care of that. My biggest concern was my fitness, right? And then getting the bike there. And I knew she would be good about the logistics of like our tickets and our flights and all that crap. But getting the bike there, I was just mortified about how much it was going to cost and how long it was going to take, and getting it through customs. So I think this alleviates a lot of fear and stress that I had.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's cool, man. Well, we'll be following you for sure while you're there. That's awesome, man. Are you guys going to be shooting any video and media and stuff like that while you're doing it?
So I applied. We actually started a vlog. There's a blog on the Heavy Enduro site that Susan's actually working on right now. We've got three blog posts up and 2 videos up of just kind of the stuff we're talking about. I'm just documenting the experience. Like, once a week, I'm just kind of talking about what I'm going through, what I'm dealing with, what I'm working on that week. And then as that kind of gets closer to the race, Corey applied. When you want to do RedBull races, you have to apply to video on the actual races. I don't know if you guys know this. I didn't. And I think a girl on a bike dealt with this. She went to Romaniacs and she was expecting to film, and she couldn't. So Corey applied to be a media person and to film, and they don't give it out to a lot of people. And when Corey backed out, they were like, we were going to give it to Corey because we really wanted to see some adventure bike filming. You fill it out. And so I fill out the paperwork, and we'll see if they give it back to me. I can film in the bivouacs, and I can film like before and after the race, but until I get those credentials, I can't actually film while I'm riding.
The race.
So we do plan on doing that. Also, my friend Kate is planning on coming. Kate she does writing for motorcycle.com. I have to do some talks with her, and she's going to come with and document the whole process as well. And supposedly some stuff is either going to come through on motorcycle.com and or Revzilla, or one or the other. I don't know yet because she writes for both of them. So supposedly there's supposed to be some blog posts about it through one of those two places. So we're trying to cover a lot of different mediums.
Cool, man. Well, that's awesome. So that kind of reminds me, I've always wanted to ask you, because you seem to be, first of all, you have a profile on Wolf Enduro, and
Yes.
you have links to those guys on your website. How did you hook up with those guys? And like, so what is that experience like? Because they've kind of exploded. I've
Yeah.
you, I've been kind of following these guys like since day one, and they went from like, a couple t-shirts and a hat and just like having some get-togethers, and now they're like the guys on the scene. It's wild. Like, it's pretty cool.
No, I mean, they're the real deal, and they're super passionate. So Wolf started with like, I can't remember, it was like 6 or 7 dudes, and they just a bunch of dudes that like to ride that were they're all good with cameras. And I think that's huge. Like, the hardest part with me is like, I go riding and like nobody carries professional camera equipment. So we miss 90% of the cool stuff that we do, right? Wolf is really good about riding with a group of super talented guys all the time that all have cameras, and they are really clever designers. They have really cool designs, and they have really cool like mantras. They really want to grow the community. They really want to help. Like, they help a lot with Trail Dad rides for Babes in the Dirt and a lot of other like local rides. They try and like go out and be on those rides to help people, to guide them, to teach them. I just literally learned it through, and like most of the things, I just found them on Instagram, and I thought what they were doing was cool. And little did I know, the original person that started Heavy Enduro actually rode with Wolf a bunch. So they kind of grew up together, and then kind of grew apart a little bit. But it started as like a similar branding, similar ideas and ideals, which I think is why I gravitated towards Heavy Enduro and Wolf, because they both came from like the same place with similar people. But
Right.
I'm really good friends with one of the main guys who does it. His name is Luke. And I've been to his house a couple times and gone on a bunch of rides with him. And he's just a super, super nice, inviting person. Like, I went to do Barstow Ridgecrest, and I fly out. He picks me up at the airport. I stay at his house. Like, I go for a ride. He lets me borrow gear and a bike, and they're just really open, inviting people. And that's what I like. Like, their mantra is literally further together. And that's what I appreciate about it. Like, I go for a ride, and yeah, I'm going to ride hard. And if I see something super gnarly, I'm going to do it, but I'm going to come back to the group, and I'm always going to make sure I'm stopping and making sure everyone's there and everyone's comfortable. And I think that's one of the things that really draws me towards them, is it's always like, we're in this together. Like, no man left behind. It's a very like military-esque kind of like understanding of riding, is like, we all go together and we all leave together. And I really appreciate that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of how we've been really kind of that's what kind of attracted us to Wolf Enduro in the first place. Is their vibe was just very similar to kind of what we were doing here, and they just like getting out there and getting after it, and yeah, like it's all about the group. It's about the guys and the girls, like your crew, and getting out there, and you help each other get through the obstacles. Like, our events that we host here are arguably one of the tougher events in the area. And the whole ethos behind what we do is, we don't want people to, like, it's not a race. It's a journey together. Like, so you get out there with your team or your crew, and the idea is like, you hit an obstacle, well, then you help each other get over that obstacle.
Yeah.
And you're better for it at the end. And it just, you're doing that repetitively throughout the day. And then when you get back around the campfire, cracking beers, it's like, it's such an epic story. Everybody has that story, and it's a lot of fun. So yeah, that's cool, man. That's neat how you hooked up with those guys. They're amazing. I mean, I don't know. There's like the scene in the States right now seems pretty healthy.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of shit going on.
I think the dirt bike scene in the States is super healthy. I'm still trying to build the adventure bike scene to that level of stoke. And I think the hard part is there's pockets of guys across the country and in Canada that I've met that I really enjoy riding with. But like, one guy's in Oregon, and one guy's in Washington, and one guy's in Arizona, and, one guy's in Kentucky, and, there's a handful of guys in like Pennsylvania, and like, like literally where I'm at in Chicago, it's really hard for me to ride anybody to do any kind of this really gnarly riding with. So I literally ride with dirt bikes. So KXCR in Kentucky was like the first time I've been able to like have a crew. And I met my buddy Seth, who he lives in Michigan, Seth Haley, and he's a super awesome rider. He did we did a KXCR US Hard Enduro together, and that was really awesome. So I feel like it's starting to come together, but it's still very kind of like pocketed, right? Versus like in Europe, there's just huge swaths of guys on adventure bikes just hammering through the European countryside. And I'm actually super jealous. But my goal is to create that. I'm also super like, I work full time like you guys do, right? Like I have a full-time job. We do this on the weekends. We train on the weekends. We race on the weekends. We travel on the weekends. So like, as much as I want to like build a community, I'm shit at getting back to people and like being like Mr. like, let's talk about nothing for like, I'm working on 8 motorcycles half the time, you know, trying to keep stuff going for the next race or the next training class. So like, I'm shit at keeping in touch with people. So that makes it kind of challenging. So I lean on people like, you know, McKaylee at Moto Camp, and I lean at Wolf Enduro, and I lean on other people who I know are better than I am about staying in touch to help me keep things going. What I'm hoping for is now that I have a local race series, like a local adventure specific race bike series, that I can kind of drum up some more interest in this area in the Midwest, but we'll see.
And do you think it's growing, or do you think it's plateaued? We both have a feeling that the adventure bikes in our area is starting to grow and grow and grow. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
I think it's growing more and more. I saw the new GS 1300 today before I came here. I went to some events, and they had the new GS 1300 there, and I was impressed about how much more compact they made it. And it's definitely like more aggressive and narrower, and they're definitely aiming to make that bike ride a little bit gnarlier. So, and I mean,
yeah,
Ducati's coming out with bikes, Cove is coming out with some awesome bikes, CF Moto is coming out with some awesome bikes. Like there's more and more options every single day that I think it's definitely still ramping up if all these manufacturers are still pushing more and more to adventure bikes than ever before. So I think it's for sure still ramping.
Yeah, I think so too. And like you said, they're all getting a little bit smaller. They're all geared more for a little bit harder off trail terrain, which is exactly what we like, you know. So
yeah. Well, and I think the more people you expose to that adventure bike market, you're going to find the people that want to do stuff that's a little bit gnarlier, a little bit tougher, get a little bit more outside their comfort zone. You're always going to have that, I don't know what you call it, the mainstream sect if you want. But the more mainstream folks are getting into that market, the more we're going to get people like, you know, us who want to take those bikes and do crazy shit on them.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think that's part of the training class, right? So like the training class is designed to bring people into an unintimidating environment to learn, right? And then also meet people. And then once we do the training classes, hopefully you're like, cool, this is really fun. And now we're doing the races. So hopefully it's like, listen, we're doing this race series. Now you don't have to race against dirt bikes, which is really intimidating. Now you can race against adventure bikes in your class. And it's a lot less scary to line up with adventure bikes than dirt bikes until you've got 12 of them elbows to elbows. That's kind of scary.
Yeah. That's a different scary.
But like, yeah, it's a different scary, but like, you're there with people that you've met that want to do what you want to do, that are interested in adventure bike riding and pushing the limits. So as you kind of develop that culture, you're going to naturally get more and more people that are going to say, oh, those guys look like they're having fun. This is really unintimidating. Like they're all over there hanging out by the campfire, getting ready for the race tomorrow. Like I'd like to be a part of that, you know?
Yeah. So you had mentioned briefly before that you traveled a lot. So what's the genesis for your travel mainly? Is it the teaching? Is it going to events? Is it a combination of both? Like, or is it just getting out there and you know, experiencing, you know, a lot of the country? Like, I mean, I got to be honest, I'm super jealous of the United States. They got the lion's share of the weather, and we seem to. I don't know who drew the line between our two countries, but I'd like to meet him and slap him across the face because we got nothing for the year.
Listen.
But yeah, no, seriously. I mean, there's so many amazing places to ride in the States. And anyways, my point, like what I was wondering is like, what gets you guys traveling like all over the States mostly?
My wife. That's what gets us traveling over the States. So to put it like really simply is, you know, when I was single and I was just kind of traveling, I could only do, you know, a weekend trip here. And so I would like leave work and drive through the night and ride Saturday and ride Sunday and then drive through the night on Sunday and get to the work on Monday like a freaking zombie, or like take a Monday or take a Friday off, right? So my time off and my you know, days I could go do things, and my distance was very limited based on the physical ability of just me driving there and being in Chicago, right? Like Michigan's got some pretty awesome trails and it's a big trail system, but it's pretty aggressive for big bikes. And at that time I was on the Ducati, so that was a little too aggressive, but like everything's like 12 hours minimum to get to anything cool to ride, right? So I was doing not many trips a year, and when my wife came along, and she was primarily like riding track bikes, like a Gixxer 600 on the track, and I got her going on dirt, and she just, you know, she naturally is just, she's extremely eager. And when we were able to like, you know, combine our income, and she can work partially remote sometimes, so like she could drive somewhere and then I could fly in and she could pick me up, and then we could do an event, and we could drive somewhere, we could leave the RV somewhere, and then we could fly home, which is what we've been doing for the last 3 months. So like she's such a good schedule and planner. Like if something even remotely comes up, she'll be like, oh, let's put this on the schedule. Like she'll load the calendar up and I'll have like a literal heart attack. Like every single weekend for the whole summer is completely booked. And I'll be like,
I need one of those in my life.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, it's cool, we'll make it work. Like it's amazing how she can just figure out anything and make anything work scheduling wise by just like, oh, we'll just go here and we'll just drive this here and we'll just rent a car over here and we'll just, I don't know how she does it. If I wouldn't be anywhere near the travel I would be doing without her, and we wouldn't be doing anywhere near the distances. Like we've been to California, I think 3 times. Just driving there, it's wild. Wow. It's 30 hours to get to California from Chicago, depending on where you're going.
Tell us about it.
Yeah, we know. Yeah, it's a long way. It's a long way over there.
I feel like we could probably do like a whole episode on like logistics of motorcycle travel and have your wife on as a special guest.
Yeah,
she could
talk us through it. You probably should, because she's a phenomenal rider, and she's a very interesting person. She's 5'3" with a 26-inch inseam. And she was riding my multi-enduro, and now she has a Desert X. And guys will be like, I can't do this, I'm too short. And I'm like, okay, Susan! Yeah. And she'll get on one of my bikes and show them how to do it. Like, it's wild.
Oh, my gosh, that's great.
That's fantastic, man. Yeah. Cool. So out of all the places that you guys have gone, do you have a favorite like location? Like if you can go anywhere riding tomorrow, no questions asked, where's that going to be?
Oddly enough, I love Kentucky. Kentucky is phenomenal. We help sponsor, my buddy Drew, who runs another podcast, Moto 80 VR. I've done like 3 or 4 podcasts with him. He runs a free event every year called the Red River Scramble. All you have to do is book a spot at Lago Linda Hideaway, and you pay Lago Linda the camp fees, or, you know, get one of their, you know, little fancy huts. Or you bring your RV, and it's free. You just show up to the event. You don't pay Drew a dime, and he gives you like 30 tracks from like easy street, super scenic road, kind of mixed gravel, all the way up to like super gnarly single track, muddy, you're going to die in a swamp. And the terrain and the variety of terrain and the type of dirt in Kentucky is just phenomenal. Like it's weird because where we go in Kentucky, is this really interesting area that was a lot of like oil towns. So there are a lot of like really old gravel and dirt roads they're technically like maintained roads by the towns, but they're super rugged, like Jeep only roads. So you've got all these roads on maps and GPS files, and you could literally just follow them anywhere, and they just snake over all over the place. And some of them have like down trees, and some of them have like huge holes in them just full of water, and some of them just rip straight up hills with rock gardens in them. It's a really, really wild place.
That's interesting.
We must go.
And I found the dirt there is very similar to Erzberg dirt.
Interesting.
Which is odd.
Yeah, that is odd. Does it resemble, like, does the terrain resemble like TKO territory? Like, obviously without the gnarly TKO.
I haven't been to TKO,
terrain,
so I don't have an honest answer. But I know, like, a lot of the East Coast stuff is really like, it's probably a lot like PNW, where it's more damp, right? And there's a lot of rocks mixed with vegetation, mixed with washout. So, like, traction can be great, or traction can totally suck depending on the day and the rain and the type of rocks that you're on. So it's a really, like, mixed bag of terrain. It's probably a lot like some parts in Canada where, like, it's just really moist all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly have that issue sometimes, especially with wet springs. It's just, it gets pretty slippy.
Cool, a little mucky up here.
Kentucky's a lot of clay, and the clay gets nasty. That clay is just, it's slick as glass, and it sticks, and it just balls up and gums onto your bike, and it adds like 50 pounds to your bike. It's violent.
Oh,
not good.
No.
Not on an adventure bike. That's not good.
I don't need 50 more pounds on my bike.
Low fenders for the win.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So what are some of your, like, pro tips that you might be willing to impart on this podcast for anybody that's looking to get a little more aggressive on their adventure bikes? Like
tips and tips.
Yeah,
I got lots. The biggest one that I teach most people is suspension setup. So a lot of people make the mistake of trying to make their adventure bike too soft. And the problem with that, especially on the front end, is the bikes are super front heavy. So you need that bike to, like, hit an obstacle and pop up and stay up, right? Because it's so front heavy, the front just wants to slam. And by the time you hit that log and the rear end hits the log, it's just throwing you over the front end of the bars, right? So the biggest thing that I tell people is speed your rebound up in the front. So meaning turn it out, right? Let the oil flow faster. So when you hit an obstacle, your front end pops, right? Right? And you can stiffen your compression a little bit too, right? You don't want to hit a log and have it be dead, right? Because you're just going to slam your skid plate. You've got 2 or 3 inches less ground clearance than a dirt bike, right? So you need to be able to hit that obstacle, whether it's a log or a rock or a tree root, and you need that front end to pop up and stay up. So speeding up the rebound and stiffening the compression a little bit pops that front end. But then the next biggest mistake that people make is you need that front end to stay planted, to stay down, right? So if you slow the rebound down in the rear, turn the needle in, I found what that does is the front end pops up because the rebound's quick. Boom, pop. But then when the rear end compresses, that slow rebound keeps the rear end down longer for a long enough time to get up over that obstacle and then land like level or like front tire in the air. So you're not just hitting that obstacle and slamming on the ground. Because most people, they hit it, they get scared. They're like, oh my God, my adventure bike is going to kill me. I'm going to flip over. And then they chop the throttle. When in reality, it's the opposite. Like on a dirt bike, you'll flip that over all day super easy. But it's really hard to flip an adventure bike. Like surprisingly hard to flip an adventure bike because it's so front heavy, right? And it's got so much mass. And the wheelbase is 1.5 feet longer in sometimes, usually about 1 foot longer to 1.5 feet longer than some dirt bikes. So you need that extra kick and that extra stick down to hold that bike down and keep you going over the obstacle. That to me is more important than having a soft suspension that absorbs everything. You don't want the bike to feel dead. You want to drive through those obstacles.
Right.
Damn good tip.
Yeah.
And I learned that the hard way by just literally just fucking with clickers, just like, and it was mostly on the Ducati. I could not get that Ducati to pop the front end until I I blew up, I totally grenaded the right front fork cartridge. Like it was just exploded and making noise. So I pulled it out. The fork tubes were shredded. I had to order new fork tubes, and I ordered a Matris cartridge kit, and it had a rebound adjustment on the top, and I'd never had that before. The Ducati's like electronic, like you hit the buttons and you get what you get, and it just does its magic, right? Which was horrible. It was super cool most of the time, but when you were trying to hop on an obstacle, it was not helpful. So I just like one day I just cranked that rebound knob, and it made the world of difference.
Yeah, to be fair though, I don't think the Ducati designers at that time had that specific activity in mind when they were building the bike. So,
oops.
I may or may not have a lot of conversation with the Ducati North America at the time about racing that bike, and their exact answer was, "That's not the direction we want to go with that bike." And I was like, "But that's what people want to see. Like you're new to this market, and this is your first like true adventure bike. I know you don't want to get your shiny, pretty Italian thing dirty and scratched, but that's exactly what people want to see. They want to see people beating the shit out of it, and that it lasts." And I beat the shit out of that bike for 4 years, and it lasted. I was impressed with that bike and how much I put it through and how much I couldn't break it. It never left me stranded.
Yeah, I spent some time in Italy, and while we were there,
oh, you did you?
Oh God. Yeah, and so while we were there, we rented Multistradas to do the north and the south of Italy. At that time was 2010, and I love that bike. Like it was a fucking amazing motorcycle. Loved it, and I've owned many Ducatis in my lifetime. Loved every single one of them. Never had issues with any of them. I always thought them to be great bikes, and I had always wanted that Multistrada to be like you, just that little bit more, so that you could do more with it. It was supposed to be this adventure bike, and then the Desert X came along, and I was like, "You got it, finally!" Like this thing is like 10 years too late, but still, it's here now. Amazing. And but yeah, so I'm glad they're making it, and I'm glad they're kind of making that foray into off-road riding now, which is pretty cool to see.
Actually, so Moto Corsa, Shaheen at Moto Corsa in Portland, he bought my multi, and then they took it to a 24-hour, completely destroyed it, like did more damage than I did in 4 years in one weekend racing it. And he's got it sitting, and he was going to turn it into like a rally bike and like strip it and have Gregor Halenda, who did that like chrome framed or nickel plated framed 890 Rally. That was a cool bike that Upshift talked about. Gregor was going to build it, but they destroyed it so bad. I think like they broke the front beak, the oil cooler's leaking, it's leaking coolant. Like it's so trashed. I had a buddy who was going over there, and he was going to look at buying it, and they wanted such a small amount of money. And he was like, "Oh, it's actually more beat up than I thought it was." And he walked away. And I was like, Susan was like, "Maybe we should buy it and just strip it and like put dirt bike forks on it and put a shock on it and like pull the tank and like make a custom tank." And I was like, "That sounds so cool, but I don't know if I want to do that much work."
That would be cool though.
Yep.
Yeah.
160 horsepower monster and make it like sub 450 pounds, just a ripper. It'd be a great desert bike. But I think too much power for like what I want to do, like hard enduro, slow technical. It's really challenging to find traction. At least it was with that wheel, with the tires that I was limited to on that wheel set, right? Maybe with like a narrow wheel with like a super like off-road enduro based tire, I might be able to get more traction with it, but I don't know. Maybe.
Yeah. So that kind of brings me to the next question. I was wondering, like, what's your experience been with the Desert X? Because your wife had one, and I've seen pictures of you riding it. So how have you guys found that bike compared to, let's say, the T7 or maybe even some of the KTMs? I don't know if you have experience with those.
Yeah, I mean, I've ridden, in our training classes, we take people on a trail ride at the end, and some people die, so I have to ride their bikes out and bury their bodies. And so I've ridden a lot of bikes, and I've ridden the 890. I haven't ridden the Norden, but it's essentially the same. I've ridden all of the Triumph Tigers pretty much, besides the new 900. I've ridden the Desert X. I've ridden the Tenere. I haven't ridden the Aprilia yet. And, you know, I like, originally one of the reasons why I like the Ducati, especially like my 2010 second gen multi-enduro, was just that barkiness of the engine reminded me of a dirt bike. Like that just snappy, rowdy V-twin reminded me a lot of a dirt bike. So I like that. That's what I liked about my multi-enduro too. But, you know, as I have the Tenere and with how smooth that Tenere is, it's still barky, but it's just like a smooth, clean bottom end barky. Like it's similar, but just refined, right? It's hard to go back to that Ducati, her Desert X. I ended up, it wanted to run away a little bit too much. So like almost all adventure bikes, I dropped the front sprocket one tooth, and that brings you from like 10 miles an hour idle to like 6 to 7 miles an hour idle. That helped a lot. And I think a tune and an exhaust would help a lot, because those bikes, those big L twins tend to run pretty dirty at low RPM, under like 3,000 RPM. So I think I like it. It's hard for me to tell because it's sprung for her weight. She's 120 pounds. So like when I get on it, it just sits on the ground and I bottom it out constantly. There's a few things that I don't like about it. I don't like where the water pump is and how wide the bike is physically. And when you put a water pump guard on it, it sticks out so far, like you hit your shin on it all the time. And then I don't like that it doesn't have a lower frame rail. One of my favorite things about the Tenere is that it has those two lower frame rails. And even though they bolt on, and even though they're kind of flimsy, when you bolt a skid plate to it, man, can that thing take abuse. And like the biggest thing that concerned me with my original multi-enduro was that it didn't have lower frame rails, and it had a really flimsy skid plate stock, to the point where like no one even made one when I was riding mine hard. I built one from scratch on my own for that bike. And that was a feat, because everything's like super asymmetrical on that bike. So nothing lines up with anything anywhere. So it was a really challenging thing to do. I made this crazy paper template and then made one. And the Desert X is the same way. And I think for the average adventure rider, it's a phenomenal bike, because it comes with all the bells and whistles that you need. It doesn't really need a lot of upgrades. It doesn't have too many things that are just like extra crap, right? It's a fairly good weight. It's a fairly good engine for the average adventure rider. And when I say average adventure rider, most adventure riders are riding street, some gravel, some two-track, maybe a BDR is usually like the hardest thing the average adventure rider is going to do, is like, oh my God, I did a BDR, right? Which some of them are really tough. So I think from that standpoint, if you view it through that lens, it's a phenomenal bike. But for how I ride, for like ripping through gnarly rock gardens, like I don't know if you saw that video in South Dakota where I was just like bombing through this Erzberg style, like Carl's Diner rock garden. I wouldn't want to do that with it, because it's too fragile, you know? And I think a lot of people ask me these types of questions, like, do you think this is a good bike? I said, there's no bad bike. There's a bad application for a bike, right? Like I would do certain things with certain bikes that I wouldn't do with other bikes. The Desert X, I think, is a phenomenal bike, but it's not the right use case scenario for how I want to ride.
So on that, so the T7, and so I think Paul Terras would agree with you, because he seems to fancy the T7 quite a lot.
That's my guy.
That's your guy.
What is it about that bike that really kind of, you know, does it for you? Like, what is it that attracted you to that bike and maintains your loyalty to it in terms of like what it can do and its capabilities? Like, what is it about that bike for you?
Less is more, right? Just like anything else. You know, how many times have you packed for the first time on your moto camping trip and you came back and you're like, fuck half this shit, you know, like I didn't need half of this crap that I brought, right? Like,
that was like you on our trip to Baja. Sent it all home.
But like, I think there's been this, and I was a victim of it, right? I bought the multi-enduro. I'm like, I want the biggest, I want the best, I want all the electronics, I want the most horsepower, I want the biggest tires, like I want all this crap, right? And I think you learn the hard way that like less is more, you know, a little less horsepower that is a little bit smoother delivered gets you better traction on a gnarly hill climb. A little less weight, a little narrower bike makes it so you're not fighting the bike as much, right? Like that bike is so smooth down low that like, but it finds traction. Like what I like about the adventure bikes versus the dirt bikes is like, yeah, the dirt bikes are light, right? But like sometimes because it's so light, it's a fight to sit there and find traction. And one of the cool things about an adventure bike is it's got so much torque. It doesn't stall as easily. So you're not fighting the clutch as much. And it's got so much bottom end that it just digs out from nothing. And it's also got so much weight that when you're on a hill, you're putting your weight plus the bike's weight on this one tire. So you're potentially putting like 600 to 700 pounds on this one contact point, right?
Yep.
So on hill climbs, I find during races, I pass most guys on dirt bikes laying down on hills, or like I'll be going up a hill climb and they'll slow down and I'll be able to slow down with them until they stall out and spin out. And I can just walk right around them and keep going. Like that Tenere has such smooth power delivery and such good dig from down low where it just doesn't stall that I can do anything really controlled and like log crossings, like just a little bit of compression, little bit of clutch, little bit of blip, and the bike just it rides like a dirt bike, but that extra weight and that smooth at the engine just gives me so much control over how I deliver that power and where I put that power that I'm getting the like advantage of a heavy bike with the control of a little bike. So it fits this weird in between where I'm getting a little bit of A and a little bit of B in this package that just does it for me.
Cool. Yeah, we have a buddy, Terry Schaubel, who has a T7.
Yeah.
And his bike's sweet. Sounds amazing, too. You put a good pipe on those bikes. They sound awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This thing out of the box sounds pretty amazing. With the stock pipe, jeez, I don't know if
heard that bike is phenomenal.
It is, yeah. It's a good bike. I've only put 61 kilometers on this one, but I think it's going to be a really great bike.
That's Aprilia, though. They all sound amazing.
They do. They must.
It's an Italian thing.
Yeah, it's like they have a sympathy, you know.
Well, it's like Ferrari sound amazing, Ducati sound amazing, Aprilia sound amazing. Yeah. They all sound good.
Yeah.
It's the Italian thing.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's another like segue, right? Is like the Aprilia has a much more limited repair facility, you know, so you don't have that help that you need when you need it, and you don't have the parts availability. You know, another reason for the Yamaha, reliability, like super simple ABS, no traction control. That's it. Like not a lot of crap to break when I'm out. Like on the Ducati, I would worry like if I put a hole in the skid, like in the skid plate, and I crack the oil pan. The oil pan is both engine halves. There's no pan. It's both engine halves. I'm roached. If the traction control decides to die, if the key fob decides to die, if the computer decides to die, if any one of these extra components decide to die on me, I'm kind of up shit creek riding really hard areas in the middle of nowhere that I can't get my bike out besides like a helicopter, right? And then the lower frame rails. So the reliability of the T7 and the T7's network, the lower frame rails, those were also two really big proponents for me for picking that bike.
What's so how comfortable do you feel like if you're going to go any length of distance, what do you feel is like a good area of comfort, like in terms of distance on that bike for you? Like, because I know, like, you know, on our 1090s we can go quite a long time before we get grumpy. So on that small, and I know from going across Canada on a 690 that is not the case. It's completely different.
I had a 690 and I was like, the 690 was a funny bike because like I thought it would be this cool unicorn bike, but it ended up being this weird in-between bike that I couldn't get to do things. Like it did everything. It was like a fancy KLR. Like it did everything, but it did everything well. And but granted, I had a 14 and I've heard the newer ones are a lot better, but it was like riding a dirt bike on the road. So it still kind of sucked. Right. Yep. But then off-road, it was a little too kind of awkward and clunky, and the suspension kind of did weird things that I couldn't really figure out. And the Tenere just doesn't do that. I don't, truth be told, I don't do a lot of like road riding at all. My bike is set up with narrow wheels and mooses, and I use roads to like transit connect. But I did a 2-day ride with the Wolf guys, Barstow Ridgecrest, and it was like 110 miles day one, and then another like 90 miles day two. And we were, 2 days straight, just ripping sand dunes, ripping sand whoops. Like, this is Barstow to Ridgecrest in California, so it's all sand dunes and whoops and like rocky, nasty hill climbs with sharp rocks. And I was happy as a clam. I really enjoy that. You get a seat that's huge. You want to sit down and be comfortable. I'm a small guy, right? So like, I'm only 170 pounds and I'm 6'2". So like, it doesn't take much for me to be comfortable. So
yeah. What suspension work did you do on that bike?
Originally, I got a deal from Fast Bike Industries on a full Öhlins Andriani kit. So it's Öhlins kit. From what I understand, Andriani owns Öhlins, and they basically took some off-the-shelf RXF forks, built some triples, took the TTX flow, and kind of just modified all those parts to fit the Tenere. And Fast Bike gave me a screaming deal. It was the first set in the U.S. They gave it to me for like basically cost to just kind of push it out in the market. And it definitely changed the way the bike handled, like night and day. But there were still some things that I couldn't figure out. And because Fast Bike was kind of like in between selling to Andriani, they couldn't get it in to service it, to revalve it and respring it. So I never really kind of figured that suspension out. And I'm not really a great suspension guy, but stock, the suspension was 200 front and rear, and that was supposed to be 220 front and rear. And I ended up just doing weird things to make, like, super softening the rear end and stiffening the front end to make it do what I wanted, but it just never felt right. And I ended up getting a hold of MX Tech because they work with Slavens Racing a lot, and they had been working with Damon Bradshaw for like 2 years to develop a full custom kit. So they take their national rear shock, and they take their blackjack forks, and they were modifying them to fit the Tenere. And they had 3D scanned the lugs. They make all the stuff in-house. So they have their own 5-axis machine. They draw it, they design it, they cut it in-house. They make their own triples. The triples are actually X-Trig triples. X-Trig had only made like 10 sets. They bought the last 4, and they just ordered another 25 sets. So it was X-Trig triples with their own custom lower lugs, and basically dirt bike forks modified to fit the Tenere. So I worked with them for like 2 or 3 months, Adam over there, and I took my bike over there and we dissected his stock stuff and we dissected my Öhlins stuff, and we kind of both went over what we liked and what we didn't like, because I had 2 years on that Öhlins suspension beating the crap out of it and knowing exactly what I didn't like and what I liked. And we developed a bunch of things to make that work. And now we can basically build, it's supposed to be releasing any day now, but we can build any length you want in the shock from 200 to 225. You can't go any higher because there's a physical limitation of the frame. You could technically cut the frame mount and move it, but that's a whole other ballgame. And you can go anything from 200 to 260 on the front forks. And they'll build it any length you want, anything in between. So I'm running the first prototype set of that right now in the world. And it's 250 mil in the front, 225 in the rear. And I rode that at the KXC Hard Enduro when I broke my right foot peg off and still almost finished. And then I've ridden that in the desert, and that's been phenomenal. It's tiers, right? So like stock stuff, revalve stuff, Öhlins stuff, and then MX Tech stuff's like way up here. It was literally like, no joke, it was like going from like a stock Jeep to a Baja truck. Like, I can bomb like third gear through whoop sections in the desert, and it just doesn't care. Nice. It's amazing.
Yep.
But the shock has low speed compression, mid speed compression, and high speed compression. And the nice thing about that is like, I can really dial the shock in down for the slow speed technical stuff. but then I can ramp it up for the mid-range. And then if I'm like doing like bigger, harder, faster desert stuff, I can really crank it for the high speeds. So it's got a ton of tunability, so I can kind of dial it for like almost all of my needs. And once I've got it dialed, I really haven't had to touch it much.
Nice. So is this is the suspension? So you're happy
This is what
with
I'm running.
that one, right? Yeah, cool. So that's what you'll send over?
Yeah, that's what I'm going to send over to Romania for sure. I'm going to get a second set of
Cool.
extra triples and then send those to those guys so they can pre-assemble it. And then I'm just going to bring my shocks and my fork on the plane. And the shock actually has a preload adjuster that they designed and built in-house as well.
1, 2, 1, 2, 3, I got beer, 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 I Come on, I want.
That was
We seeing
perfect
some
timing because I also had to be.
murder?
I don't know where I lost you guys.
You know what? It's okay though. Joe Rogan doesn't show the
He
time.
does.
Ah,
That's okay. We can fix it in post.
that's right. Yeah, nobody will see that.
I don't know where I lost you or where I was at.
We were just finishing the talk about the suspension. You kind of went one like these, and it was gone.
The
all
MXX
good.
suspension, it's amazing. Those guys are amazing. That's what I'm taking to Romania. Super awesome.
Cool. And besides Romania, do you have other big plans for this year, or is that the plan?
In preparation for that, I took a Sedlak class like 3 weeks ago, which is some guys in Southern California. One of them, I forget the guy's name. I want to say Ernie. He actually won Ironman class in Baja, so I did some training with him. That was a lot of fun. And we're flying out on Saturday. We're doing a training class in Ridgecrest on Sunday. And then I'm going and riding. You guys know Radek, right? Burkat?
Yeah.
Yep.
We don't know him personally, but I know
I'm
what you're
meeting.
talking
If
about.
you're in the adventure bike world and you ride bikes hard, you probably have seen Radek. Like, that's just the way it goes, right? So he's going to be, I think he's in Page or St. George right now. So I'm going to meet him that Monday. We're going to ride for a week with my buddy Seth. And then me and Radek are going to race Grinding Stone Hard Enduro on big bikes. He did it last year. I was supposed to go with him. Well, he wanted me to go with him, but I couldn't take any more time off work because we had been riding that whole week, with Corey from Cam Lady V when he set up that big ride. And we were trying to do 5 miles of hell, but we got snowed out. So we did a bunch of other gnarly stuff like Pritchett last year. And then all of a sudden Radek was like, oh, let's go do Grinding Stone. And I was like, I have a job. I have to go back to work. So this year, he told me about it earlier, so I was able to kind of plan for that. So yeah, that's going to be absolutely wild. We're going to do that, and then just like a slew of races here locally. I'd like to do a couple more hard enduros. I'm going to see how this one goes. And then I'm going to do all the local like hair scrambles, the local adventure series that we set up, obviously. So I'm just going to try and get as much local race seat time as I can in before Romania.
Nice.
Do you ever plan on getting down the Baja at all, or have you been down there
I have
with
been
your bike?
wanting to get to Baja since I was a small child, and I have not been there yet. I keep bugging Luke to let me go, but they don't want to let a
Do
big
it.
adventure bike ride with dirt bikes in Baja. I might go with
No,
Ready
man,
to Ride
I think-
Rentals.
I think,
Bo
you
from
know, the
Ready to Ride
team-
Rentals has some great trails, and he likes to push big bikes hard as well. So I might make it down there with him one of these days, so me and him can actually push it, because he seems like a guy I'd get along riding with.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we got he's
Really?
our next guest
Tell
on
him
the
I said
podcast.
hello.
Actually,
Really
funny
kind
enough.
of give him the old
Yeah,
college nudge
You will do.
for me.
will do. Yeah, no,
Purple
like,
nerve.
Well, we'll bug him. We'll be like, Andy wants you to make the Baja adventure bike thing happen.
Here's the thing, right? Like, when you're with dirt bikers, you can kind of get along with riding with anybody, but like, I'm very selective about who I ride really hard shit with. Like, I'll ride anywhere with anybody, but like, if you want to go do stuff like Pritchett and 5 Miles of Hell, like, there's maybe like 10 people that I know that I would let come on a ride like that with me to try it. Like, you have to have a very particular attitude, and we're doing this together, and we're all getting out of this, and we're all helping each other no matter what happens. Like, and we're all going to have a good attitude. We're going to laugh, and we're going to have a good time, and it's going to be awesome. Like, and I think there's not a lot of people that have that gumption to A, try that kind of stuff, but B, like, there's a lot of grouchy people out there that like get riding and they're like,
yeah, you got to be happy.
Like, the goal is to have a good time.
I don't know what you guys are talking about.
Yeah, I've seen this son of a bitch grouchy before.
I mean, like, everybody's gonna have a day.
I'm in and out real quick.
You gotta have a good attitude.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I have my moments, but I get in and out real quick. I just need to have a little.
You just have to stop by
purge,
Starbucks,
and then we're good.
That's right. Yeah, quick latte, and he's good to go.
No, I think I need to have a little scream in the woods.
No,
and
okay.
I'm all right.
No joke.
But you are
I
quick.
did the Colorado.
I'll give you
one
that.
of the first BDRs I did, which is actually one of the only BDRs I've ever done, was the Colorado BDR. And I was riding with this dude, shorter dude, Triumph Tiger, newer to riding off road, but like phenomenal rider on road. Like, he could wheelie a Harley Sportster like a nobody's business, right? But super short guy, like my wife's height, right? Mm-hmm. So he'd make it through these gnarly sections, and then he'd go to like stop and put his foot down and fall over. He got so mad one time, he took off his helmet and just threw it on the ground. It was hilarious. Like, bro, that was like a $700 helmet.
I never got that. What? Never threw my helmet on the ground.
Dude, it was close. It was close. I'm thinking snow bikes. Remember that, right?
Snow bikes. That's a different story. Man. That was way.
You were gonna kick. Yeah, it is fun, man. He was gonna kick over a snow bike till he realized he had to pick it back
That's
up,
what we
and
should
then that
do.
stopped
All
him.
right, we should
No,
buy my old multi-enduro back and turn it into a snow bike.
Yes, that is amazing.
I'm going to have to leave it with you guys because I don't get any snow.
Cheers that.
Okay. Oh, yeah, no problem at all.
Neither are we at this point.
No, we had to drive a little ways this year. This is a funny winter for sure this year.
You guys ever talk to a guy named Mike Haberoff?
Have you ever tried?
He does an ice road ride every year.
Oh, fuck, that sounds familiar.
Yeah. Is that out west?
He tells me Canada, and then I just black out.
It's pretty big, man.
Hold on, give me a second.
I wonder if it's the one that does with Emily.
Yeah.
Because they do an ice road ride.
He talks to a lot of people, and yeah, he does an ice road ride. Super nice guy. He actually got Trevor and Corky from Heavy Enduro UK over, and they did 1 year with him, and I was just like, he keeps getting me to want to do it, and I'm like, I don't want to drive 30 hours to freeze my ass off for like 5 days.
Right.
Is he like on a 1090 or something like that?
He's got a 1090. He's got a lot of bikes. He's a super, super nice dude. He's his other account is like Moto Medic.
Yeah.
So he goes to like Baja races and he does medic stuff for people. And he did that with Trevor. That's how him and Trevor are tight.
Yeah.
Cool.
Right. Okay. I know exactly what you're talking about now. Yeah. The name rang a bell, and then he said Moto Medic. I'm like, 100%. Darren's hooked up with him. Our buddy Darren has done a lot of Baja stuff. Ironman as well, Ironman finisher, and he hooked up with him as well. They were doing some stuff down there.
I think what I need to do is just build another T7 and just leave it on the West Coast somewhere, so I can just like fly in, do some riding, and not have to like the logistics of getting back and forth are just so crazy. Like trying to work a full-time job and do all these crazy races and do training, and then on top of that, trying to get a bike to and from there all the time is just it's a lot.
Yeah, it is. We I think single-handedly, me and my buddy put Lynx Air out of business because we rode from Cabo to LA to LAX, and we flew home from California to Toronto for $109. and that airline is now out of business. I feel terrible.
Oh, fuck.
You know, but that is doable. You know,
Seriously.
yeah,
$9.
$109. It was from LA to Toronto. I think.
There's a reason they're out of business.
I know, and I'm sorry. That was my fault. But yeah, that's what I need to do too. I need to leave a bike out there to have on the West Coast, and then
Fuck yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, that's the dream.
that is the dream.
That's
Yeah,
the dream. Yeah, I've been brainstorming about like how do I get a 4-stroke down in Baja and just leave it there?
yeah,
You know?
it'll happen.
You just got to
Yeah.
make friends
It
with the
will.
Wolf guy,
Yeah.
and then find one of them that'll let you leave a bike at their house.
This is true. We actually did tonight.
Yeah, we
talked
got
to
it local.
him in Baja,
Yeah.
and he said exactly that. So we're getting closer. It's one step closer.
Yeah, we're one step closer for sure. we're moving in the right direction.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, that's good. But you're in Chicago, man. You're not that far from us.
No, you're not.
We got to get
Where-
you up here
where are you
and
guys
ride some of the stuff we got up here.
Do you have plans on ever coming back?
We are what is a good way to put it? We're probably. Do you know where Kingston, Ontario is?
I
Yeah.
could Google it.
You obviously know where
Yeah,
Toronto
yeah, yeah.
is, though, right?
Yeah, I'm like
know where
9
Toronto
hours,
is.
I think, from Toronto.
Okay, so we're probably another
3.5 from Toronto.
3.5 from Toronto, just a little bit
what
like
town is it?
northeast ish.
Ooh, that
Barry's
sounds
Bay.
nice.
It is nice,
It is
actually.
nice.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
love it.
yeah.
Oh,
Barry's Bay, Ontario. It's
a
a
tiny
huge
little
metropolis.
town,
I think there's 12.
it looks like there's
It's
like
very
4
small,
houses
yeah.
on the entire plot
But
of land.
There's 5. There's 5.
There's 5.
But we've riddled the entire land of
Do you guys
amazing
live on
single
Mass
track
Island?
trails.
Because that looks cool. I want to live there.
No, but if you look at Bark Lake, which is a bigger lake over a little bit, that's where we are. Mask Island.
11 hours and 7.
There's a lot of
Oh,
inbreeds
man.
on
I
that
have to
island.
drive
right?
through Detroit. That's scary.
Uh,
So
yeah, don't do it.
Yeah, I remember driving to the Dacre, and like I think the Dacre was 12 hours for me, and this is 11. So I probably drove like past your
Yeah,
house
yeah.
when I was going to the Dacre.
You did. Yeah, we waved, but you didn't wave back. You remember that?
That's right. So you would have been really close to where we are.
Yeah.
At,
Yeah, and I
coming
would
to the
have
Dacre.
had we decided
Yeah.
to ship the bike, I would have been shipping it. I think through Toronto if we were going to air freight it, but
Oh, right. Yeah.
that's okay. Yeah, I wouldn't. I think people always ask
Yeah.
me like, "Do you want to do this?" And I'm like, and I get like really weird about it. I don't know. Like I have this weird thing about like committing to stuff. I don't know what it is. Like I get super weird. But if my wife hears it,
Susan, does he have
100%.
commitment
But
issues?
like, if my wife hears it, she's like, "Oh, it's on the calendar. We're going." Like, and she already like in 5 minutes, she's like, "We're going here, and then we're going to this hotel, and we're going to stay here, and the dogs are going to stay here." And I'm like, "How did you do that?" And she's like, "Already got it planned." And I'm like, "All right, we're going."
So we really need to contact your
So
wife.
if you want to schedule anything, just talk to Susan.
Well, I have. Yeah,
All right. Send us her email address.
I have her email.
Okay, good.
She was the first one to get in touch with me. We're good.
Okay,
We'll sort it out.
Yeah.
We'll pencil you in.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Very cool. So you said you did one BDR. You guys are lucky. There's an organization
Phenomenal.
in the States that
Yeah.
has the BDRs. Yeah, they are. Yeah. We touched a whole bunch of them on the way across the States, but
Yeah.
just little bits of it. But every one of them, we had fun on them.
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
great.
You guys were gone for like a month or something, right?
We particularly,
Yeah, we were. Yeah.
it took us 3 weeks to get down to San Jose
Yeah.
from here. Pretty much nonstop. I mean, the only time we took the time off, I think we took an extra day or two in Tennessee at a buddy's place. But other than that, it was every day
Yeah.
just moving.
That's a lot of. How'd you get that much time off?
We thought we were good.
Divorce and then remarried.
Wait, so like in between, right? So, like
Same-
divorce
same
to get
woman.
the trip, and then remarry after the trip. That's how that happened.
Yeah. That's right. Like beg for part. Yeah, I'm sorry. I want you back after,
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good question. How did we get that time off?
So he runs a resort that pretty much shuts down in the winter time,
Yeah.
or at least for the first bit until the lake freezes. And then I have a government job, and I burned every single minute of leave that I had built up. And then I just burned it, and it was worth it though.
It was worth it.
Yeah, I'm just about to kick over to another set of holidays, so
3 years
I'm
later.
still paying for it. Yeah. But no, it was good, man. It was good. The shocker was how long a mile actually is. We had this idea in our head that we were going to do like 600-700 miles a day.
Yeah.
No.
Nope.
No. It was more like 400 miles a day.
Yeah.
That was like our max. I was like, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mile is a long way.
Yeah. Darn you.
Yeah.
USA airs.
Yeah, they fooled us. Fooled us.
You got us.
But yeah, we ran into some really wild, like cool places. There was this one section that I maintain is the best paved twisty road on the planet that I have ridden. And I think
Where the hell was that?
I think it was on the MA BDR somewhere.
Yeah.
We were riding over this ridge, and it was like off on this dirt, and then we had to get back to the highway, and to get there we had to ride through this little valley, and it was wild, man.
He doesn't want to hear
Did you
about
see?
roads. He
No,
doesn't
I,
give a shit.
I
True,
do.
but
Did
yeah,
you see
it
the
was still fun.
NorCal BDR video?
I haven't
Not
seen
yet, no.
I haven't seen the
There's
whole
like
thing. I've
there's
seen
a
little clips of
beautiful,
it.
like steep, gnarly pass that they go up into the mountains and then come back down, and it's like one of the advanced sections. It looks primo, like it looks like
Oh,
something
cool.
you wouldn't expect on a BDR because it's like above average BDR level, but apparently it's an option, and they're starting to give like more
Yep.
hard, easy options. And actually, if you get a chance to watch that premiere,
Oh,
there's
cool.
a super
Cool.
tall dude that rides a KTM with glasses named Trevor. That's the original guy who started Heavy Enduro. Well, one of them, the second guy. So he helped.
Oh,
He's
wow.
been developing
cool.
that NorCal
Yeah,
BDR
well,
route with the founders of BDR for like 3 years.
Mhm.
Nice. Yeah. That's coming out now, right?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just
yeah.
watched.
Okay.
Yeah,
Well, that sounds like another trip. Hey, if that airline didn't go out of business, it'd be
Yeah.
cheap to get over there.
well, I'll send Susan an email, and she can
She
organize
wants to
it
do
for
a
us.
BDR real bad, and I think for us the BDRX makes the most sense because we can kind of just do one and like loop back around and come back. The
Yeah.
problem that I have is I run a machine shop, and like if I leave for more than a week, it's chaos. Like they might as well burn the shop down if I'm gone for more than a week. So like
Mhm.
me even thinking about leaving for a month is like a pipe dream unless I quit, you know?
Yeah.
This is why I don't want any responsibility at work.
I try to, but
It's perfect.
keeps
Like, it's
spinning
like,
at me,
don't
and
put me in the
I don't
corner.
know, it just
I'm good.
happens.
You gotta stop being good at your job.
I know, but like people do stuff that's
Yeah, you gotta
wrong
start
and
fucking up.
like yelling,
Pro
so
tip.
it's fine.
Oh, I see.
Oh God.
Cool. All right. Well, how do we follow your
So if you go
Romaniacs
to
trip?
the website heavyenduro.com, where we've got a blog section in there, so we're writing stuff. Susan is writing all the blogs, and then I'm just like doing vlogs and just talking about nothing incessantly like an idiot. And then Susan's just posting it up there unedited.
Perfect.
Right? So you've got some stuff to read, you've got some videos to watch, and then, we're going to start throwing stuff on Instagram. I'm real bad with Instagram. I probably could be a lot better. I kind of just do it when I want to. If I don't feel like posting, I just don't post. So, oh well. But yeah, heavyenduro.com is the main area. It's also where you can find all of our training class schedules, which
Okay.
we don't even put our training class schedules on there too. We also put like if we're going to certain events or if we're doing like the Fox Valley Off-Road Race Series or something, we put all that on there so people can show up and hang out and watch.
Cool. Right on.
Cool.
Well, we'll put a bit of a link maybe on the podcast so that people can follow you along, and we'll definitely be watching. So
Yeah.
don't let us down. Do you hear
Ugh, I'm gonna die.
that? Yeah, we'll watch with like this
The biggest
one
thing
eye.
is, that I was worried
Just,
about
oh,
is
geez,
the
is he gonna
training.
make it?
Like last year, I didn't feel like my physical endurance was really like there. So this year, I was like if I really want to do this and I really want to finish, like I have to get a physical trainer. And I listened to that one that you guys had with, was that Thrash Motoco?
Yeah.
That was really good. I really liked that. And I messaged him to see if he had any like one-on-one sessions left, and he didn't, but he had his app sessions that you could do. But by that time I kind of found like a local trainer that I've been using, and you know, he's not a moto guy. So I think it's taking me some time to like get him to understand what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And, you know, like most people who train athletes are like, I need to do a 300-meter sprint, or like I need to play volleyball for like 20 minutes, or I need to, you know, play football for 3 hours, but I get to break every 5 seconds. Like you're doing these like quick sprint things, like motorcycling, especially racing in Romania, where you're doing like 110 clicks a day for 4 days straight, is such a full body violent workout that like it's hard to explain that to somebody. And so like I've been kind of working with him, and then he's working with me. Like I send him videos on body position and how I'm riding and why I'm riding like that. And, you know, we spend a lot of time kind of going over the different, whether I'm sitting and how long I'm sitting and where I'm sitting and why I'm moving and why I'm standing, and what all those positions do for me, what muscle groups they're working. And then like he'll give me a workout for a while, and then I'll go, like when I went to Barcelona Ridgecrest, and it was 2 days. You know, I came back and my arms were good, my legs were good. Historically, my legs were weak, so we know we improved that. But then my lower back was getting sore just from like hammering whoops in third gear on a 450-pound bike. And so now we've got some stuff to kind of work on that. So he's growing and adapting and learning, and I'm getting stronger and building more endurance. So I think that's been helpful, but I'm still nervous that like my skill and my endurance isn't going to be at the level. I mean, this is like, there's a big difference between like me racing like C-class hare scramble dirt bike guys and like, oh look, I got like third against a bunch of dirt bikes in C-class. Wow, look at me. Like that's not that big of a feat, right? To then jump and be like, oh, I'm going to go to Erzberg. Like there's a huge gap between where I'm at and where I'm going that I'm a lot nervous about how that's going to go, and that I'm going to like show up and make it like half a day and, you know, grenade some part on the bike and hurt myself, or just not be able to keep going, you know?
Yeah. What's your end goal? Do you want to place well, or you just want to finish?
This particular time, I just want to finish. So I'm doing iron class. So it's like gold, bronze, silver, gold, bronze, silver, gold, silver, bronze, iron, and then atom. Atom is supposedly like a trail rider class, basically.
Right.
And iron's a little tougher. You're going to have like some steep cement walls you have to cross, and, you know, it's going to be steep ups and steep downs. I think the biggest thing I'm concerned about is the steep downs, because I heard they just go on for. So my goal is literally just to finish for this, and that's it. If I can make it to the end of 4 days on an adventure bike, I'll be really happy.
Sure you will. Yeah, that's great. That's a huge achievement. So that's what everybody, that like all our friends that have done it, that's what they said. Their first year they did it, it's just to finish. Don't care, you know, how we place, how we do it, just finish it. So yeah, good for you, man.
And they all said the downhills were the worst.
I think I'm mostly worried about my front brake overheating, because I stripped one of the front rotors, but I might, maybe for Romaniacs, I might leave the other rotor on. You know, I was trying to cut rotating mass and weight, but I think in hopes of not, you know, overheating, I think it might be ideal to leave that second rotor on.
You'll need it.
Yeah.
Probably. I think you'd be, for the amount of weight that you might save by taking that off, I think you'd be wise to put a second rotor on there just to give you the extra stopping power and to stop that overheating.
One rotor and one caliper is like 1.5 pounds. It's surprisingly light, but from a rotating mass standpoint.
Yeah. So you're still waiting at this point to see if they find you a bike, or have they found you a bike? These conversations
actually just happened 5 days ago. So they originally found me a bike like overnight, but it was a 23. And, you know, I've got a bunch of custom wiring and nav stuff. And different parts that I've made custom for the front end to cut. Now, the headlight alone weighs like 5 pounds. So I bricked that, threw that away, and made an aluminum nav tower from scratch. And that only weighs like a pound. So I don't want to go with the 23 because it has updated electronics, TFT dash, and 3-mode ABS. And my fear is that internally there's going to be changes to that bike from mine, and I don't want to risk that. So I want it as close to my bike that I'm riding as I can. And from what I understand, the American bikes are built at the Japanese facility, and the European bikes are built in a French facility, is what I understand. So there are subtle differences, including in the engine, between the two, is what I've been told. I haven't confirmed that yet.
Okay.
So they have not, as of yet, found me, because originally they found the newer bike, and I was like, no, I want the older model. So they're still looking. I have no doubt they're going to find me one. It's just, is it in decent shape? And they're a lot more expensive. They're $10,500 in the US, and they're €14,000 in Europe, which is a huge difference. Yeah, it's apparently America is very inexpensive for motorcycles, is what I'm learning. And when you go to any other country, they're way more money.
Yeah, come to Canada.
How much?
Yeah, they're really expensive.
20,000.
14.
Yeah.
Yeah.
14,
So it's
14
about
grandish.
Which is about $100,000, US.
Yeah, but 14 grand Canadian's like $100.
This isn't
US.
Mexico. Come on.
It's pretty cheap.
That's
Sometimes it feels like Mexico.
Yeah.
Except with snow.
So what will you do when after this race is done? You'll sell that bike, or they'll sell that bike? How does that work?
In stages, like so. Corey's like, "Will you race this race?" And I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." And then it's like, "Okay, how are we going to get the bike there?" All right, we're not getting the bike there. Now we're going to buy a bike. So, there's a couple different options. I mean, Romania is a pretty cool place, and Europe's a pretty awesome place, and I haven't really ridden there ever. Besides, I did some training with Jarvis at Erzberg on the mountain, and I did some training with him in Germany, which was cool. Nice. But other than that, like, I haven't really been there. So I thought, it'd be cool to maybe keep it for a little bit, maybe keep it for the next year so I don't have to deal with that logistics again, right? Maybe Corey wants to race next year when he's good.
Right.
Maybe keep it there so my wife and I can fly out and we can rent her a bike. Or, for the $35 an hour, they're €35 an hour, they're charging me to build the damn bike. Like, take all the parts back off, strip the parts, sell the bike, and just put it back to stock and sell it as is. Like, there's a lot of options. I'm not terribly concerned. It'll work itself out. I think at some point you just have to, like, I'm going to get there, I'm going to do it. And then things tend to, when you get to that level, like, they tend to kind of just like work themselves out as you go,
Yeah. It'll be somebody's yard art probably after the end of that race, It'll just be sitting in a creek somewhere.
I was taking the Ducati when I first built my custom skid plate through like the gnarliest rock garden in Pennsylvania on this ride called 3 Mile. And it was just boulders the size of car tires. And I'm just bouncing over these fucking boulders in like tight single track on this multi-enduro trying to get through there. And at one point I threw the chain, right? So I'm like sitting on the side of the trail, laying the bike over, and guys on dirt bikes are riding around. And some guys are like, "Are you need help?" And the other guys are like, "Why are you in my way? Go home." And I was like, "I'm trying. I'm trying to get the chain back on. Leave me alone." And at one point I was like, dude, if I put a hole in this engine case or blow the motor, like, I might as well just leave it here as an obstacle for everyone else. Like, it's just going to be here in 100 years. Like the old Ford trucks that you see just laying in the middle of someone's field. Like, there in 100 years, there's going to be a multi-enduro just laying in a field.
A Ducati. Shit.
I always wondered where those things came from.
It's him.
No.
Yeah.
That's real heavy enduro right there. Taking your Model A into the woods.
Right on. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, the original. OG.
Right on, man.
Cool.
Well, listen, we've been all at this for almost 2 hours.
Yeah. Good chat.
It's been an awesome chat. So hugely appreciate your time. Any parting thoughts before we cut this?
No, I mean,
short?
I think like inherently, I'm just not a very like confident rider, and I don't really think I have the best ability. I think I just have enough drive to try. And I think that's what's super important. Like, I'm not a pro. I'm not Paul Terrace. I'm not even a good dirt bike rider. Like, I'm barely a C rider on a dirt bike, right? But like, because I'm willing to try and learn and fix and adjust and adapt, like I've gotten to where I am, and I still have a long runway to go. But like, I want everybody to realize that like, if you really want to do it and you put in the seat time, like, you can do it. You can figure it out. You can ride wherever you want to go on whatever you want to ride. It's just finding a crew of like positive people and not being afraid to like get out there and try and ride by yourself and make friends with people who have a good attitude. I generally don't actually recommend riding alone on adventure bikes, but you're going to have to like do something to like find people to get out there and ride with. And I think it's super important.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's really good advice. I mean, that's it's been my experience, and I think Jay would agree with this. Is the community that we've developed and found through our love of motorcycles and riding has just been amazing. It's been phenomenal. Mm-hmm. And through our events, same thing. We've met so many amazing people that we wouldn't have otherwise, and they come from all walks of life, from all over the province and country, and even the world. I mean, we're meeting people from all over, like yourself, and our friends in Baja, and just everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's been really, really cool.
Yeah, that's what it's about.
Yep.
Cool.
Man.
Yeah, good advice.
Well,
so John, what he said is try it.
Okay.
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
And
don't be
break
a
your bike.
bitch.
Right on.
That's what I heard.
Sweet.
Don't be a bitch. Do it.
Well, on that note.
Awesome, man.
Thanks, guys.
Cool.
It was a good chat.
Thanks, Andy. Best of luck at Romaniacs.
Yeah. We'll be watching you.
We'll be following.
Yeah. Cool.